What worked yesterday isn't necessarily what works today, but that's with like the silver bullet things, the core stuff, which is understand your branding, connect with people, find people that you resonate with, work with those people, add people to your prospect base. Don't focus on just commission. You don't want to have commission breath. Focus on people. You focus on people, that pays off fantastically in the long run.
Today's guest has spent the last 2 decades in real estate with Watson Realty, one of Florida's largest brokerages. He served over 20 years in the United States Navy, 10 active and 11 in the reserves. He is a top producer and leader in the greater Jacksonville market. Over the years, he has served in many organizations such as the Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce and the Northeast Florida Association of Realtors, amongst other organizations. He has a reputation of having a strong work ethic and integrity. Let's welcome this guest I know has much to share on what it takes to be great in real estate, Jon Singleton, to the show.
Thanks, Tracy.
Glad you can make it down.
Right.
As we were talking pre-show, I mean, as a leader in Watson, and Watson being one of the largest, brokerages, in Florida.
Right.
You've been there 20. You were talking about loyalty, and I want to just tap on that, some of the things you said, but I want my audience to hear about it, and kind of how that your loyalty, obviously, you're dedicated to the Navy initially, and Watson, and hanging there. I'm sure many brokerages are calling you on a daily basis, trying to steal you over because of the success, obviously, you've had for many years. Right. Tell us a little bit of what that means to you and how it plays into your business and right down to your customer, the loyalty that you have.
Right. I think, one of the, we're kind of talking a little bit. I think one of the key components for the consumer is the loyalty. They're not focusing on that. What they're focusing on trustworthiness, right? And so what we really do as agents on this is a daily basis. We connect with people, we meet people, we connect with people, we develop two-way trust. And actually, you're talking about the NAR settlement. I think the huge thing about the NAR settlement, all we got to do is just work on that two-way trust. We've kind of neglected that for, 100 years on the buyer side. Yeah, we always do that. That's a huge thing on the seller side. Mm-hmm. But for me, so I started off, I went in the Navy to pay for college. I got very fortunate, got a Navy scholarship and paid for college. And so I was in for 10 years, did a bazillion different things. I flew helicopters, and then I got into logistics. I left active duty, was in the reserves, and the Navy was, I was not a perfect fit. I was kind of a square peg trying to go in a round hole. Mm-hmm. But it certainly served a purpose. Got another degree out of the Navy. Had an amazing number of experiences. Spent 4 years off U.S. soil. So connecting with people, I speak some Farsi, speak some Arabic. I spent a bunch of time in weird places. Yeah. But it helps me in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. One of them is connect with a lot of different people, regardless of, race, religion, creed, national origin, whatever. Yeah. But also, there's times in real estate where there's some drama. And sometimes I have to bring people back to reality and be like, dude, nobody's bleeding out. It's gonna be okay. Yeah. You need to chill. Yeah. And and if we can't have that connection, that two-way relationship, that trust, we're not. Why are we working together? Right. I want to connect to people that I can connect with and work with them. And you come across people periodically that they're not your people. Yeah, don't work with those people. Save yourself a lot of time. Mr. Watson would say, if you've got a customer that you're just like oil and water with, stop working with that customer and go focus on someone else who you can serve, who's going to appreciate you and you can connect with. Because
it could take a lot of energy out of you when you're battling that and worried about, you're walking on eggshells, like they say,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and then you're worried about texts late at night. You try to answer them, and then you're all riled up.
Because they might be mad at you because you didn't in the morning.
You don't sleep. Yeah. And then the next day, you're not good to anybody. Right. Yeah, don't do that. Cut that person.
Right. Right. There's enough business out there. And I think that goes back to just the attitude of living, people say living in abundance. That's not the last customer you're going to have. Go out and find, one that you're going to pass. But your loyalty and trust is obviously important to you. You through your career, it's been a cornerstone for you. How is that development out? We talked about staying with Watson for 22 years now, right? If I got that correctly. How has that allowed you think if you've made changes, could your business be where it's at now? Or you think because you have stayed where you have, obviously you said they've treated you well. Obviously you've had great success. You've treated them well. And that mutual relationship has come back before. That has really allowed you to get, I guess, a cornerstone in your market. Because sometimes obviously you make changes. I've changed lenders who I've worked for, and sometimes you have to restart. People are like, I don't know that lender, that kind of thing is your customers. I don't know today if customers are they really thinking about Watson, or it's really John is the brand.
Yeah, I think in real estate, it's always been that agent's reputation, and that's why it's a little hard sometimes to break in, and that's why I think so many new agents end up going for the pay per click or the pay per lead kind of thing, because the earned customers it's more difficult to get them, but then when you do, they're gold, right? And I think that for me, I've been with Watson for 22 years. My next 10-year horizon, looks great. If there were some reason to change, right, which we're good. They're not.
Mr. Watson, we're good right now.
Yeah.
We're good.
But if there was some reason, I think my customers wouldn't have. I don't think there'd be much of a speed bump there. Now, it's something you got to get ahead of, right?
Right.
And I've got friends that have, they're on their fifth or sixth brokerage. That wasn't. Sometimes you see people leave. They think the grass is greener, and then they come back, and they're like, "Wow, that was not what I thought it was." But I'll talk to Corey Hastings. I've talked to Courtney, or somebody just called from Sotheby's, and one of the problems, so the recruiters assume that they know what their value proposition is. I find this a little annoying. The recruiters have done less research on me than you did before I came here today, right? And so the recruiters will call me and they're like, "Don't you know we're the best of the best?" And they have no idea what my current situation is,
right? And
they should come stop by my office, right?
Yeah.
I actually have this corner office overlooking this lake, which is really nice. And so I'll talk to Linda or somebody from one of the other companies, and I'll say, "Do you have waterfront?" And they're like, "Yeah, we got waterfront." I'm like, "No. For my office." Can I have a waterfront office, please? And they're like, "What?" So I think I've got the nicest office actually in the company, which I just got lucky.
Well, you're hitting on something really I bring up on every show, but kind of from a different angle.
Yeah.
And the agents are out there searching. I think it was Caitlin Doherty with DJ and Lindsay. Obviously, she fits that mold. She loves it there. Right. She's happy. But because one of the subjects I always talk about is finding the brokerage that does business the way you want it, where you want to go into that corner office. You've earned that corner office. You're proud of that corner office. That's your obviously a little hot point because you brought it up. That's important to you. You enjoy that. Others have other needs, whatever it may be. Maybe I know Engel and Volkers, the agents come on, they brag about a lot of support, transaction coordinators, assistants, whatever, those types of things. And the agents are bouncing around, and I think there's two things working against each other there. Somewhere in between, the broker's not doing the research on you, finding out, getting a little bit to know you, especially, 22 years, not that you've been in the business 2 years, you've been here 22 years. For you to make a move, it's going to be big. So they've got to come at you with, or approach you in a subtle way and find out more about you. They're not doing that. And then there's agents that are bouncing around that haven't done the research on the brokerage, enough research on the brokerage that they're moving to, that they've gone to 5-6 brokerages over their career.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and also, I've got to realize that if I moved, Watson would take a hit. And it would really hurt some feelings to some people who've been really good to me. And so, there's a whole different kind of thing there.
Well, it goes back to your loyalty thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And And we do have a digital sign on State Road 13, San Jose Boulevard. Man, I mean, so many people. Well, most of the past mayors. I mean, the past 3 mayors have referred to me as the mayor of San Marco, which I appreciate. Yeah, it does kind of pigeonhole me a little bit. Now we're working on Donna. Now I do have. Anyway, one of her relatives just sent Donna a letter saying, "You got to understand, John." Anyway, it's just kind of funny. But that digital sign, nobody's got that. Also, because Mr. Watson bought this piece of property in 1976 because he knew that it was a core. Anyway.
He took the McDonald's model.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Buy the prime real estate.
Well, and he bought the prime real estate. It's always on the boundary between 2 neighborhoods, right? And the San Marco office, which I've renamed everybody's like, it's a San Jose office. I'm like, San Marco's got the higher price point. Call it that one, right?
Right.
But it's right on the border between San Marco and San Jose. The Avondale Ortega office is right on the border between Avondale and Ortega. Ponte Vedra is right there, kind of Atlantic Beach. That's Jack's Beach, getting into Ponte Vedra. And everything's kind of on a border. But I think we are reducing our footprint a little bit because we had 53 offices, which is a lot.
Yeah.
But so we've kind of restructured some things, but I think we're doing the right things. I think Watson's doing the right things.
Yeah. I'm gonna transition. But I definitely want to come back to that mindset of the property. I'm going to transition here because I want to do my typical plug here. If I can get in the camera here. These nice laser graphics by Remy Graphics. I don't know if you know Dunya Taylor with Remy Realty.
Not yet.
She's purchased purchased this company that the lady no longer wanted to do it. So she purchased the machine. She's making these. She'll make one-offs. So if you've got a closing and you want to put, hey, John and Sally, welcome to Jacksonville or whatever, and, John Singleton on the back with your phone number, she'll make those one-offs. But Remy Graphics, and this is, they make all sorts of laser engravings, and I'm going to put the website up there real quick on the remygraphics.com, and look at what she's got going on there. But like I said, great for closing gifts because she'll make one-offs. You don't have to order a couple dozen. And this one is for you here, actually.
Nice.
So I'm going to hand you that. Yeah. It's got the show logo on the one side there.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I could call her and get these for myself.
Yeah. Always want to start off the show so everyone gets a little background on you. Where are you from?
Birmingham, Alabama.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that comes through, that native Alabamian accent.
No, I didn't quite pick it up there.
It takes a couple of years.
But it does lead into not too far away, just to the north, going to Vanderbilt.
That's true. Yep.
Yeah. Was it because of the Navy offered a scholarship there, or you? Because you really have. Well, today I don't know if it was different then. When the Navy gives you an ROTC scholarship, you can go to anywhere there's Navy ROTC.
That's great. It was the best school I got into.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. What was your vision at that time? What John wanted to do as a career.
It was a pre-med English major. I had no idea. That lasted.
As most 18, 19-year-olds don't.
No clue. Yeah. I got into psych. Navy doesn't pay for psych degrees anymore, Tracy.
Interesting.
Yeah, they like engineering and math, which was part of that whole kind of square peg thing. I didn't really fit. But then you go on these. They're kind of like internships, but there's summer cruises. You go and you do these summer events with different parts of the Navy. You'll go and hang out. Well, the enlisted guys will say, we got an officer in the making. Let's go chip paint in the bilge, and that's super fun. But you spend some time doing that. You spend some time because it's like 150 degrees.
Yeah.
By the way.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, but you spend time with submarines, with the with the Marine Corps, with the aviators, with the surface guys, and you kind of figure out kind of like where your people are. And the pilots were super fun. I really enjoyed hanging out with the aviators, and so wanted to go to flight school. And so once I graduated, I did fortunately get a flight slot, and so went through flight school, became a helicopter pilot, ended up flying search and rescue off aircraft carriers for several years. Airstrikes in Bosnia. That was kind of the first round. I was 26 and bulletproof, and later when you have kids and you're in combat zones, totally different vibe. Okay. But anyway, and then my wife and I ended up going to Bahrain. Lived in Bahrain, which little is Arabic country off the coast of Saudi Arabia for a couple of years. And then we came back to D.C.
Did you have kids at the time?
No kids then. We went to D.C. I had a pretty cool Pentagon job, but then the community, I had shifted into a logistics community, and then that community was going away, and so there was just kind of organizational movements that were happening, and it was just and then my wife got pregnant with our first child, and the Navy said, well, how do you feel about Korea? And I'm like, yeah. Anyway, Candace was like, I'm going to Jacksonville. You can go to Korea. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And so, anyway.
So because you had done a tour through Jacksonville during this time?
So I married a Jacksonville girl.
Oh, she is? Okay.
So
Me
now
too.
I met her in Pensacola, actually at a bookstore, not in the bar. I was looking for love in the bar, but I found her in a bookstore.
Found her in a bookstore.
Yeah.
Where you were going in to get change and she was getting a book, or what was
No, she was working there. And then I kept going back, and like that Christmas, like everybody got books. Finally worked up the nerve.
How many books did you read over that period of time?
Read? You be buying?
Yeah.
I bought a lot of books. I do read a lot of books, but yeah, no, I kept finding reasons to go back and talk to this cute cashier.
Well, you were in the reserves, and you had put under, at least what I saw there on your LinkedIn, about you did some. You mentioned something about HR, doing some human resources in your reserve role, and I imagine over the years, I don't know, what your support team is like right now, maybe, you could describe it. Dealing in I think human resources people are unique animals.
Yeah.
Some are really good at it. I think it really has to do with the company they work for. I'm thinking corporate America. Mm-hmm. Some corporate Americas live and die. They let their human resources run their company. To me, it runs them into the ground versus, doing advising and, doing what they should. That's the role they should have. But I imagine, is there any experiences you had dealing with? I mean, and probably explain to the audience a little bit, what is human resources in the reserves? Like, what are you actually doing as far as the military human resources is concerned? And then, you mentioned earlier, it might have been in pre-show if I didn't confuse the two, that experience and being able to take it to relating with your customers today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found this really interesting niche, or it found me. I don't know. I mean, kind of God put me on this really interesting path.
Yep.
And when I ended up the last 4 or 5 years when I was in the reserves, I had made it to senior officer level, and I had experience from the deck plates of the folks at the tip of the spear, absolutely kind of the farthest in the chain of command from the Pentagon. And I'd been at the Pentagon, and I'd been at the places in between. I mean, I'd been at at the places where the captains were, or the admirals were, or the high level admirals, or then the actual Pentagon where like everybody is. And I'd spent time on Capitol Hill. And what was really interesting, I had gotten called up because I was a young rookie in real estate, kind of one of the up and coming guys. Made Jacksonville's 40 under 40 before they called it that, because it was in the old days. And I had gotten called up, and I'd gone to Afghanistan. I'd left for 15 months, and that experience being mobilized and then coming back, I then went and trained all the reserve units. And I created this unit in the Spotlight program, and I went and talked to them, and made sure that the things that they would need to do if they mobilized, either as a group or individually, they had all that stuff kind of handled, right? And that they also were kind of emotionally prepared for as much as you could be for something like that. And then I would also go and spend a weekend or a couple weeks at these mobilization centers where they're in processing at the time. I mean, this was, full on Iraq and Afghanistan. We're sending a ton of people to the desert, bringing a ton of people home. And they were going through, thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of folks a week or a month. And so I would go and allow the commanding officers to go and take a break. They could go on vacation for a couple weeks, because I was a Navy commander, and I could go in, and and invariably, one of the the captains, the same as colonel in the other forces, somebody would freak out because something was taken too slow, getting through medical, getting through whatever, and they were mad because their team members were super stressed. And I'd say, Captain, can we come into the office? And I could bring the captain into the office, and I had had the, on my resume, on my chest, right? He could tell that, I had 2 of those Afghan medals because it technically was 2 tours and a bunch of
your
other
wings
stuff.
and yeah.
Well, and could talk to him about, listen, I'm not a paper pusher. I'm actually operational, which is one of the issues, where a lot of HR folks are not operational. They understand the paperwork.
Right.
And so paperwork's important, but you got to keep an eye on the mission. And I could actually kind of help him drill down and focus. I'm like, sir, this is what we're doing. This is why. I know it's painful. When I went through it myself, this is what I experienced. And it was a really unique perspective because none of the other folks that were kind of running that had really necessarily gone through those same experiences I had. So anyway, it was interesting. Now the application into the real estate world,
or just dealing with people.
It's part of just dealing with people. I do. I mean, personally, I wish I was a better manager. I did manage like 100 people or something in the Navy. I'm really not that. I really love. Hey, this is John Brooks. Everybody's like, oh yeah, no, I've left production. I'm like, production is where my happy place is. Yeah. I love production. Right? I don't. Not the repair negotiations, but I love, the getting with people and people are like, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, ma'am, we're going to take care of that, right? I love that, being able to sit across from someone and say, listen, all this stuff you're stressed about, I've done it 1,000 times. We can solve these problems. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Now, people are like, well, how's it going to happen? I'm like, well, I don't know how it's going to happen. I have no idea how it's going to happen. But just
get on my back. We'll get through
first
it.
Contract, second contract, third contract. I don't know. Can't control crazy, right? But I can talk to people and I can say, we're going to take care of that's the part that I love. I really do.
Yeah.
My partners, like her to. She could deal with the operational stuff.
Well, I'm trying to remember where I was reading this. It might have been rocket fuel, but there's this. You and I are the same way. How are we going to deal with it? We're going to open that door and we're going to walk out in the hallway and we're going to go down the hallway and deal with it as it comes at us, right? Where there's others that got to go, well, what's going to happen after I open the door? Well, we're going to step in the hallway. After I hit the hallway, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to take a right, and then we're going to take so many steps. They want all that information before they ever open the door.
So the Navy is unique of all the services. I spent a lot of time with all the other services, and I spent time with like British Air Force and New Zealand special ops guys and like all sorts of different. The Navy, because of a couple thousand years of admiralty law, is used to saying, Tracy, this is what I want you to do. You're going to go to the other side of the world. And you're going to do this thing, and I don't know how you're going to do it, and I don't know what's going to happen. But when you come back, if it's not done, it's your ass, right? And sorry, I don't know if that kicks us off YouTube. But you steam over the horizon,
right?
The captain's in charge because there were no comms, right? Maybe even now. Often you've got satellite. What if it doesn't work? What if there's a storm? Right, there's times where there are no communications.
There's many ships that have never returned.
And the Navy is unique, I think, of all the forces. And, we say, aye, aye, sir, and we go and we do it, and we come back, and we're either lauded or pilloried. You have no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
You have no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And in fact, even after you accomplish the mission, you come back, you still don't know if you're going to be rewarded or punished. And sir, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, anyway, that same kind of attitude, people are like, how are you going to make this happen? I'm like, well, I don't know. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen, right? Don't worry about it.
Exactly. And you're bleeding that confidence on them. You're giving them that, again, go back to the initial thing, the loyalty and the trust. And I think there's I always remember, and I can't remember the lieutenant, it was in Band of Brothers. Yeah. And there's that scene where they're at the farm and he just runs straight at the Germans. And actually runs right on through them and turns around and starts shooting them in the back, basically, from the rear. And hit that type of leadership. And all the soldiers who were hunkered down and wouldn't even pop their head up are seeing this guy and going, man, and they get energized by that. They get energized by that leadership and that just courage. There's 1,000 different words we throw out there to describe that, but it inspires people, and that's why they become great leaders, because people want to follow people like that.
Of course, he gets through the other side. He's like, I can't believe that played out just like it did in my head. Holy cow! Well, the other thing is just the the faith, right? And you talked about abundance. I think abundance is super important, but also realizing God's going to give you the business that you're supposed to have, and it's going to be okay. And you think about, I think about, people ask me about all the listings I've gotten, and I think about all the times I've gotten fired, right? And I'm still here. It's okay. And I read a quote the other day that I thought was fantastic. Like, whenever you're having a bad day, think back, think about your track record, think about how, what percentage of bad days have you survived? And you're like, I've had some really bad days.
Yeah.
I'm at 100%.
Yeah.
I'm going to get through this one too. It's going to be okay. And so, anyway,
it's just maybe give me a thought. I take my son to this gym. He's working out for high school sports and stuff. And I was taking a picture of him, and he was doing this exercise. And my wife was getting all worried about this. Oh my God, his joints! I said, honey, the coach is right there. He's watching. He's got the right amount of weight, and he's doing the exercise properly. I'm like, wait till he starts squatting 400 pounds and putting it on his shoulders, and then you want to work, then you want to get concerned. He ain't doing nothing right now. But when you haven't experienced that, when you haven't been put in those adverse situations, some people are just like, oh my God, what are you doing? And we've talked about it on the show with other guests, and obviously you've been put through it, going through the Navy, but you and I are about the same age when we were growing up. Going through adversity, like you said, a bad day, right? Going down and being told to go chip paint in the bilge at 150 degrees. Yeah, you go down there. Most people would open the door and close it and turn around and say, "No, I ain't doing that."
Right.
But we did, and how that has given you that confidence, like you said, this is no problem. We're buying and selling homes. We're not shooting guns at each other. We're not going to, these long off lands here that we don't know. Yeah, they speak a different language, and we don't even know what they're saying. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. They could be talking about how they're going to shoot you in the back of the head.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's why you learn some key words.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And I want to tip on it just so the people understood the reserve role, like you said, in these what would you call them, where they were transitioning, getting ready to be shipped out, or is that what was the word? What do you call those centers?
Mobilizing.
Mobilization.
Yeah, mobilization centers.
So I think over the last 24 years, since 9/11 basically, and when the reserves and the National Guard units have been called up, these guys were just doing their weekend and their 2 weeks, and now all of a sudden, they're going from civilian life. They may be a little bit out of shape. They're not totally qualified at doing certain things, and you're having to evaluate these guys and get them off to the right schools.
Hopefully, somewhere at a higher level is evaluating folks. But that's where I land in Afghanistan. I'm a realtor, right? It's a psych major, and they're like, we want you working in this warehouse. I'm like, who am I working for? They're like, well, you're going to work for a captain. Well, it was an Army captain, right? So that's the same as a lieutenant in the Navy. I'm a lieutenant commander. I'm like, I'm not doing that. and so I go on a job. I'm like, seriously, you pulled me out of my life and left my 2 and my 4.
Because you're 30-something now, and they want to put you with the 22, 23-year-old.
I'm like, I'm not doing that. And so I went on a job hunt, and I ended up being like a key negotiator and advisor for this. It was an HR kind of thing, but I was over the folks that were doing all the admin and all the pay and finance for this 30,000 people a year at where they were training all the new Afghan National Army folks, and going back and forth and negotiating with the key folks in the country about that. And I'm like, I'm not trained for this. And I was the guy that was issuing all the ID cards for everybody coming into the Afghan National Army, because we had this card printer and I had an Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, seriously, this is how we're running this war? This was year 4 and 5. Anyway, if anyone wants to talk about which president and what happened with Afghanistan, and I don't know.
Well, you're right. They throw you out there, and you got to figure it out. That's one of the. I mean, if there's any, I think of any, you think why you should hire a veteran, because most of them have been thrown in those situations.
Yeah.
Been just dropped in the zone and figure it out.
I mean, literally, we're like, badges. We don't need those stinking badges.
All right. So, but why real estate? What was it what got you into real estate? Did you have family in real estate? What got you into real estate?
So when I was at the Pentagon, I was working in the family housing division. Actually, this is, it was funny. Part of my, anyway, bizarre career path, but ended up as a budget and policy analyst working on this. We had this huge plan where we're going to transform how the bachelor barracks in particular, which are apartments. I mean, it's just Navy apartments for single guys and ladies. But we were transforming, we're changing the architecture and making. Anyway, it was going to save the Navy a bunch of money and it was going to provide better stuff. Yeah, just a different configuration in the rooms and stuff. And so we had 120,000 apartments and then 66,000 houses that branch was responsible for. Yeah. 4 of those were super historic, multi-million-dollar. One was the chief of naval operations in D.C. One was the head of the Pacific Fleet in Hawaii, and then one was the Air Force Academy, and there was a fourth one, the commandant of the Air Force Academy. But so we were doing these like historic, restoration projects, which were really super interesting. But I was like writing a one-sheet white paper for them and sending it to Congress. And, never touch a brick, right? I mean, it was very, high level, which was, it was very sterile, right? It just really didn't get into, it seemed really super cool what I was reading, but I wasn't doing the cool stuff. Well, I got out, and we moved back to Jacksonville because my wife's family's from here, and we had our little baby boy who's now 6'6", and anyway, going to fire academy next week. But so we got back here, and my boss, who was one of my super good friends, was here in Jackson visiting, and I was working as a consultant. I'd got a master's in management, was working as a consultant, thought I was a business consultant, and I mean I was, but that's a hard job to explain, anyway. But so he was like, why don't you get a real estate license? I'm like, Mike, you sure? And he's like, yeah, you should look into that. I'm like, all right. Went, took the school, went to the school, took the classes.
At Watson?
I went to the Watson. I don't think I went to the Watson School real estate. I think, Bob Ho or I don't know, somebody. I don't know. There's one right. In Florida, real estate school. But I went to the school and I interviewed with some folks, and I'm like, this could be fun. Right, and this was what gets into, my mom couldn't believe I figured out how to make a living talking to people. And I'm like, wait, so I get to just go talk to people all day, and then, every once in a while, there's, a $10,000 check. And they're like, yeah, no, it kind of works that way. I'm like, how often do you get those checks? They're like, well...
How many people are you going to talk to?
How many people are you going to talk to? That whole equation that how long can I last without food or water? Yeah, but anyway, so I got into that. It was 2002, and got my license and started with Watson. I've been there ever since, and I've talked to a lot of people now.
So one of the questions I always ask is, what led you, in this case, led you to Watson? You've been there for 22 years. Right. You just a friend, or you just went over? Did you actually even talk to other brokers?
I probably did. Mm-hmm. I really don't remember. Audrey Ritchie, now Audrey Lackey, who now owns Legends, was the recruiter for a long time there, and I talked to her, and she hooked me up with, eventually it ended up being Clark LeBlond, who's at Legends, but he was the lead trainer over Coldwell Banker, but he was my broker for 10 years. The cultural, and, part of that, and I didn't really, we really didn't connect on this level until later, but Mr. Watson had been Army ROTC, and he'd gone to Stetson, and he went in the reserves for a couple years. Particularly when I got called up, it really kind of hit him, and he and I have actually been really pretty close. Which I think probably everybody been in Watson for 20 plus years feels like they've got a great relationship with him. But it was really good, and his culture was good. And I talked to a lot of military people about getting out, and I tell them there's only 2 things that you need to do to find a successful career shift, and it's a huge shift, right? But for military, for any veteran, you got to find camaraderie, and you got to find mission focus. And if you don't have both of those, it doesn't work. And so for me, for the first couple of years, you've probably seen a lot of people in real estate, they're killing it, right? And I hate that word, killing it. Right? And and people on Instagram don't see it as much now, but 2021, I'm slanging houses, and I hate it. So you start talking about units, right? We're talking about numbers earlier. You start talking about units, and you can sell a bunch of units. It's hard to really get behind that with your heart, right? And when you make that transition, and hope everybody I think that stays in this for more than 5 years does this. Mm-hmm. But when I made that shift and realized that I wasn't selling houses, right? I was helping people with their home. And you make that shift, you're helping people with their home, and that's something that your heart can get behind, right? And then when you're talking to people, you're talking about that, they're like, well, we're going to give you the sale. If you're not giving me nothing's for free, right? And I'd like to earn that, right? But I would like the honor of helping you with your transition, right? You start talking about transition and start talking about that home, because we're going to sell this home because it's no longer a blessing to you, and we're going to find you a new home that's a blessing to you, right? And I am a Christian. There are some weighted words, sometimes I'll use like faith and blessing and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I've spent a lot of time with folks in all different faiths, and so, it's not judgmental, but I want people to know that I come at this, it's my heart and follower of Christ, and I'm mm-hmm. going to do this in a way that not only has integrity but has morality, right? So we talk about legal, ethical, moral, not necessarily in that order, but it's it's extremely important for me to have that integrity and credibility that I'm going to do something that's legal, ethical, and moral, and I'm mm-hmm. going to do it because my license is writing on it, but also the Great Commission. I have to do that as a Christian, otherwise I've failed. So,
well, it's that whole thing, the passion that you have. If your heart's not behind it, obviously you're not going to have passion that you want. It's kind of like me in this podcast. I have a passion of doing it and learning about every agent coming on and hearing the stories and the words you were leading in a little bit. It sounds like you've done some counseling for active duty, coming into civilian world, and being a graduate of the Citadel. I had a group come down. They were studying PTSD, had to do around actually two things: PTSD, but also where unfortunately our young people aren't able to make it through boot camp, getting injured, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But what they found, because the word you used was camaraderie, what they found with a lot of the military guys that have PTSD, have those issues, that putting them in areas where there was other veterans, right, and they were working on a project together, the mission that you just mm-hmm. mentioned, and having that common bond helped them through their issues that they were having.
Right.
And that it really gets down to a real, ground level. I think a lot of people, like you're saying, to get the passion, you enjoy going into the Watson office. Obviously, when you walk in there, you have respect from a lot of people. You've earned that respect because you've put the numbers. It has nothing to do what you did in the Navy as far as they see. You're not wearing bars on your shoulders anymore. Right. And they're seeing this is, you're respected because you've been there for 22 years and you've earned that corner office overlooking the water there.
But you got to keep earning it. That's one of the things I like about sales.
Yeah.
It's not what you did over the past 22 years.
But you've put yourself into
last year.
Yeah, but you put yourself into this cycle now of loving what you do, talking to people. You mentioned that. Mm-hmm. The passion of helping them getting in their home versus, hey, I got to eat next month. I got to go scramble. I got to get, make a sale. Right. You've gone beyond that. And now you're into that. I'm helping people love what I do, and I'm talking, and you're just loving what you're doing. And that attracts bees to the honey.
Right.
Yeah.
There's also another component that's really interesting for the, kind of the veteran mentality. The adrenaline is awesome. Mm-hmm. And it's, you think about negotiations and you think about deals, you think about all the different times where, and the strategies that are winning and sometimes it doesn't work. I do love the sport. I do try really hard not to lose focus on what we're really trying to do is find a new home that's a blessing for someone. The sport of it is fun, though, and it's a lot safer than jumping out of airplanes. Just say.
So it sounds like there's two things that you get an adrenaline rush. Obviously, when you negotiated, you got that contract. Now you're riding the closing. You're like that gives you that a little rush, and then probably getting that either a referral or just a nice compliment from someone saying, "Man, just totally thank you."
Right.
That's your two moments, real.
Incredible. Yeah. I love it when someone has said, you know what, I was really super stressed about this, and you made it feel so easy, and we're so appreciative. I mean, that, oh my gosh, it just doesn't get any better than that, right? And honestly, that transcends, and this is something, most top folks focus on. I mean, that has nothing to do with what the commission percentage or the price point or it's that job well done is fantastic.
Yeah.
The money comes.
It comes.
So,
yeah. I mean, obviously that's how you measure it, and if you didn't make any money, unfortunately, you'd have to find another circle to get into.
Right.
Talk about so you had some experience in, like I said, you were, I don't know if managing, where you were overlooking those properties you were just describing, being in the Pentagon. You had these things that kind of attracted you to a high level of dealing with real estate.
Right.
And now your first year, you get your license, you're trying to get started. Especially a lot of the Watson agents we talked about pre-show, hopefully a lot of the new people will listen to this a little bit. Tell us about your first year. How did you get going? What were some of the things that you were doing? Now, 22 years later, it's a little different. You got social media, you got other things. How you relate what you did to the first year? Because I can imagine some first year people are like, dude, you've been doing this 22 years. You forgot what you did your first year.
No, I remember.
Tell us a little bit.
So you get to Watson, and there's a playbook, right?
Right.
And you open it up, and it's like, oh, there's 10 different activities, and you should do these things. And there weren't many guys in real estate at this time. Okay, this was pre-HGTV, pre-Bravo, and I got in trouble. I was on a panel with the Jacksonville Chamber. And anyway, Daniel Davis got mad at me because I said something about all my old squadron mates were like, "What are you, a housewife?" It's like, John, you can't say that. But I mean, seriously, there weren't many guys. I mean, I was 32 and super young. Don't do the math because anyway, I'm still only 37. But I was working I had spent a little bit of time working for a defense contractor. So I left the Navy. Active duty last day was 1101, which I thought was the coolest, anyway. But I had worked for SAIC, which is a big defense contractor, inside the Beltway for about 9-10 months, something like that. And then we ended up moving to Jacksonville, and so I started a consulting firm, Singleton Group, and had very, very thankfully got a contract fairly early. And but the problem is if you're all by yourself and you're doing all your own work and all your own marketing, it's that's just very complicated. And the great thing about real estate is, so when I tried to explain what I did as a business consultant, we talked for 30 minutes, and you still had no idea. I sell houses. I mean, my elevator speech, I've got 3 words, okay? 3 words. I sell houses. You immediately, and hey, I bet you live somewhere, right? Pretty much everyone does.
Yes.
And then we start, it's so easy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the elevator speech is so easy. But anyway, so that first year, I was kind of fighting that playbook. And I was still working, and I was like, you got to tell, you got to have your sphere of influence, and you got to reach out and tell everybody. And I was wrapping my mind around what am I, right? And am I something different than the realtors that I see around me? And I was looking around. The average age is it's 55. 55 female who's been doing it for a long time, and I'm looking around. We'd have these quarterly meetings for Watson, and and I'd look around like there's nobody in this room who looks like me. It's just kind of funny. And so I kind of fought the door knocking, the cold calling, all the stuff, and so I that first year. So I got my license in July, so I had 6 months, and I sold 0.3 million. So. It was a house on Barcelona, in Granada, which I sold that house to the guy I was working for. My very first sale. Loved that house.
That would be $1 million today.
262,000. Yeah, literally, that house is $1 million. But yeah, I remember Margie Scarborough in the office was like, "Well, you're spoiled because now you think that's going to be that easy." And she was right. It wasn't that. I mean, I sold that one in like August that we closed. That was great. And then I got a listing on Delwood Avenue, and I think I sold it for like $92,000. And that was it for that year. And that was, not a whole lot of cash.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the second year came around, and so as I was, as I was kind of hammering it a little bit better. But it wasn't until September, Sandy Wagner, who's been manager of our intercoastal office forever, did this seminar. And she's sitting there talking about like how do you market yourself, whatever. Mm. And she said, and here I was, 32, 33, always wearing a suit, kind of rigid, and most of my business was floor calls because people call the phone, the landline.
Right.
Tracy, I don't know if you remember landlines,
yeah.
but people would.
We're the same age, John.
They'd see the sign and they'd see, well, I'm going to call, what was it, 536 or whatever, and anyway, and so they would call the office, and I was doing a lot of floor duty, and so I get that starter set of customers, which is the same as free leads, right? It's say you start at Exit or Fathom or wherever else, and you get these free leads, right? So I'm working the free leads that come in, so conversion rate's not super high, right? Mm-hmm. And Sandy said she's it's just like 90-minute, I don't know, 2-hour whatever seminar, but there's just one sentence. It was just kind of funny. It's just kind of a throwaway line. She's like, "You've got to resonate with your customers." And I was like, holy moly.
Light bulb went off.
Oh, my God. I got to resonate. And I realized that I'm not resonating with my customers. And, there's two different things you can do, right? I could take off the suit. Right, and it's I'm still wearing a blazer because kind of dress it up because post pandemic. No one's wearing a blazer, so hey, look at this. It is unlined, so it's a nice Jacksonville summer it's Southern time. Anyway, but I wasn't resonating, and so I was a little. I was working with a bunch of blue collar guys, and I'm like, either I can like shift. And of course, we've learned how to be complete chameleons, right? Mm-hmm. You mirror, you do all the stuff, right? But I've learned to resonate with anyone. But I also realized, why don't I try to attract the people that are going to resonate with me better? And then and that's a higher price point too, right? Takes longer. Right, but that's a higher price point. And so that's where I started getting involved in same market preservation. I started getting involved with the chamber. I started doing other things. And I started getting leadership positions in those different places. And that kind of stuff is what ends up attracting those folks that appreciate the professionalism, that you bring, having come from, you was working at the Pentagon, now I'm working for this. I'm going to carry this out. I'm a business consultant. We're going to have great strategic planning. We're going to, and the price point went up. And the conversion rate went up, and everything went up because I just figured out I have to resonate with my customers. Anyway, long answer.
No, but from one little, like you said, throwaway thing at the end of a presentation that she's doing, threw it out there, and it triggers. And it goes back to how important to go to these talks like this.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I've heard that stuff before. Well, if you had been doing it from the beginning, sometimes you have to hear it 50 times.
Right.
You might have heard that actually a number of times, but never, it didn't click with you at that moment, because at that moment you had something to stick it to on the wall because you were looking for something to move your needle.
And I was at a place where I was receptive, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever it took me to get to that place and be in that moment and have her say that at that moment. Mm-hmm. And, and it was 10 years or so, maybe 15 before I tracked her down to thank her for telling me that. But she knows that I absolutely 100% have given her credit for transforming what was going to, be a real estate career, that I was going to be one of those 80% or 90% that didn't make it to 2 years or 5 years. And that comment, that comment changed it.
Yeah.
So, and then I went to a Hobbs Herder seminar that next year, and I sat there with Barbara Maple, and I worked on this brochure and all this stuff. It did take me about 17 years to print that brochure. I finally printed it. Now it's all wrong, and it needs to change again, but anyway, it's fine. Yeah.
Well, so let's break it down for you. You've been doing this for 22 years, and like I said, you walk in office. You got a lot of 0 to 5 years people. I'm sure you see all the time. Let's say those are the ones listening to it. So let's gumpify this down. Right. Resonate with you. So for you, if I've heard you correctly, where you were at and what was going on at the time, being part of the chamber and all these volunteer organizations, really, which there are a lot, and I will throw out Limelight Theater in St. Augustine because my wife's down there. They need a lot of help right now. The state of Florida pulled a lot of money from those type things down there, pull 50 grand out of their budget, which is huge as a 501c. But there are places like that, and they need help. You just need to call out in there and get involved and start mixing and mingling with these people. Because like you said, everyone lives under a roof, hopefully, or desires to live under a roof.
Everyone.
Yeah. So getting down and mixing and then like, I forget who was, I think it was Angela Walker. It's not how much you know. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And when you start putting your time into these organizations, you start building credibility, and also you're meeting people and they got to build the trust, and sometimes it takes time.
And you don't have to pay for that.
Yeah.
Right, Tracy? You don't have to pay for the membership in those groups.
Right.
And they're glad you're there.
They just want a little bit of your sweat.
Right.
Yeah. And hopefully you're bringing something to the table. But what are things, in today, we got a lot younger agents.
Right.
You talked about, the stereotypical, when you and I were growing up, was the real estate agents were wives of, the husband that was successful, not to be sexist in a way, but a lot of the stereotypical thing, a good portion of them were like that. But now, I had a 26-year-old Taylor Johnson who was killing it just last week on the last episode. We have a lot of sub 30 agents now in this market that are men and women that are really doing well. But for that agent, like you said, that might have been struggling like you were, what are some of the things they can look at it to start to resonate with the buyers of Northeast Florida?
I think there's so much more material that's out there to help now, which is really great. I mean, right now I'm devouring books. I mean, I'm going through a profitability, or production kind of pit stops, I guess, which Ron Howard, who's top agent up in Maryland, just wrote a couple years ago. And from that, I've been, I read Inman.com. And so I was reading this blog and it mentioned this book and I'm like, wow, this is really good. And so, so I started reading this book, and this book is all about, you may be, closing 10 to $20 million and you're focused on getting those awards and walking across that stage, but you're really wondering, why don't you have more money in your pocket? And it's because you're focused on the wrong thing. And I'm sitting here reading it going, oh my God.
Yeah.
I've got some things on the wall, but that's not, really I need to focus on streamlining and refining my business. There's so many different things that can help so many different agents. And, and it's not necessarily cold calling or, social media or whatever. You kind of pick your thing. I think as far as the volunteer groups, I have rejoined the chamber. I was part of the chamber for 10 years. I left it for a while because we were in the middle of the recession, didn't have any cash. Mm-hmm. And it was focused on, more kind of just, really, really, stroking through, being in the business. And so I'm back in the chamber. And, if you go in one of these groups, you are going to make the world a better place by your involvement, by doing your thing. And when you go in with a open, helping heart, that is going to be the most productive for you that you can possibly be. Now, something like the chamber, you got to go in with a plan to how are you going to monetize it, right? Now, the chamber is is a civic group. It's not the same as one of the nonprofit, going helping the Lighthouse, Limelight Theater, or San Marco Preservation, or clean up Florida waterways or something like that. Mm-hmm. You go into a BNI, you go into a Rotary. You need to go in kind of with a plan on how are you going to connect. You've got to attend events, you've got to network, you've got to talk to people, you've got to share with them like what can you do. You've got to go be a spotlight speaker. But the nonprofits are a much more, they're target rich environment. It's a military term. But that is a resource rich. You go in and you help folks. And or you dig in with your church, or you do something, anything where you're really focused and you're going in with a helping heart. we had one guy, we'll call him Blake, because Blake was his real name. I don't remember his last name. But this one guy was in our office, and he's like, I see a bunch of people are getting business from their church. I'm going to get 3 different church bulletins next Sunday, and I'm going to get me some business. And we were like, you go, Blake. Good luck. And I've done a lot of business with my church. I've done a lot of business with my friends, with, my kids' schools, neighbors on my street. Now, the problem is when you're staring at a house across the street from you that you're supposed to sell, and you're kind of sitting on your front porch and it's not friggin' selling, there is some pressure that's a different kind of pressure than when that sign is somewhere else, some other neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And when it's one of your friends and you're not, the market's not responding, right? Right now, I've got my brother-in-law's house on the market, and man, we've done price reductions. It's in Cypress Village, and it is a fantastic 2-bedroom, 2-bath, but maybe one of the best priced. But it's, there's pressure there. Mm-hmm. But if you own it and you do the best you possibly, and you keep focusing on it, keep trying to figure out, you can do some fantastic business. There is a risk there. You just got to realize that.
In these organizations that you like I said, you rejoined the chamber, but the church, you can't go and the first day you go into church and expect someone to turn around and say, hey, I'm looking to buy, can you give me your card because I want to sell my house? Right. It doesn't happen that way. You have to put yourself out there, and it may be months before anybody really even knows what you do. Yeah. You've got to, because they pick up on, when you use this weird term, fake people. Right. If that's your motive, is to go in there, I'm just going to start handing out business cards, and they're going to see that they want to see you every week. They want to, whatever, at the regular events, you're active, or you're volunteering for, maybe there's an event that needs to be organized and you're volunteering to help out. You need to get involved. Those are long-term plays. This is actually something that I've thought of recently over the last few months and brought it up at different times. A lot of agents really only look at the next 30, 60, 90 days. You've been in it 22 years now. The marketing and involvement that you're getting in things, I imagine you're understanding these are long-term plays. This is hopefully going to pay off in 3 years. If I get a deal tomorrow, oh my God, blessing. I got icing on the cake. But really, you've got to put the time and the consistency and be that guy. And I think a lot of times in these B&Is, be the last guy standing, right? Be the most senior person in there, and everybody looks up to you as like when you walk into Watson office.
Right.
And they see you as the resource.
Right. Yeah. And I've never been a B&I guy, right? Mm-hmm. And then I say, I don't want to pay to play, but I do for the chamber. So because that's it's a greater good.
Well,
it's a different pretext. I don't know, but with the challenge of church is there's a lot of business that you can get with people who trust you. Right. Mm-hmm. But, so you need everyone to know what you do, and you need to not talk about it. Okay. So that's true.
You want everybody behind your back talking about, hey, John's a realtor.
He's the guy. Yeah. Because you want to have that integrity, but you also want to have that, particularly in church, you have to have a servant's heart, right? So you go in. And so honestly, I would, in general, if I'm there for church service or Bible study or something like that, and we're actually shopping now because our church went through this big split and is pretty disruptive. But if people would come up and want to talk about real estate at church, I'm like, well, let's have coffee. Right. Let's go have lunch next week. And because I'm there too, wanting to kind of center myself and get my worship on or whatever. And, and I don't want to just talk. It's actually the only place in the world that I don't want to talk about real estate. My wife will tell you that can't seem to talk about anything else. Right. But I do love it. But, but then you sponsor the fall festival, right? And so you're one of the sponsors for the fall festival. You're clearly out there, clearly doing real estate, and then you're helping with the pony rides, right? And so we would always do that. We're not talking about real estate, but my logo is on the sign over by the face painter, right? And it's, and so that was valuable. And just other, I spent a lot of time with scouts. Spent 17 years as an adult leader for scouts. that wasn't about real estate. Now, I've had some phenomenal lifelong customers that have come from that. Because someone says, "Here's my son. We trust you, and we want you to help, raise him to be, a good man."
Right.
And keys to the house. I mean, after that, you just hand me your son.
Right.
Both of those, both of those are sacred things that, are treasures, right? And you need to, oh my God, you got to protect them with your life. The keys to the house.
Well, it goes back to, again. And I got to figure out how I'm going to correct the title for this podcast, but it goes back to the loyalty and trust.
Right.
The years you put in at your church, you didn't just do it 1 year. You've probably done that multiple years. 17 years
right.
in the Scouts. You have met many, many, many families, and
right.
They entrusted you in your own way. You probably took out of your own pocket to sponsor different things for them, put the logo on the trailer, whatever. But, you subtly let them know what you were doing. And not only having, obviously, all their contact lists, you earned the loyalty. You were loyal, and you gained the trust through that. Because there's nothing. My son's he's probably about 8 months away from his Eagle Scout. Just got back from camp 2 weeks ago. 474 in St. John's, northern St. John's County there. And when there's a shift in leadership, so to have someone there again, 17 years,
right?
And you build a reputation. Again, go back to the loyalty,
right?
Which then gains you the trust.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you're doing it.
And you love doing it. I think that's the one thing I want to say. You love doing the things at the church. Right. You enjoy it. You probably had your young kids and they wanted to ride the ponies. Hey, you got involved, sponsored the ponies or whatever it is. And you enjoyed Scouts. You loved doing it. So it became part of your lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and part of your brand, and that kind of continues. And, so one, you get chapters of your life that one kind of closes, and then kind of what do you do, and how does that follow up, and and how do you shift? And you can certainly take a break for a bit, but that constant thing, and that's where you do have to love it. It really helps to be an extrovert, but. Yeah, the scouting has been great. The shifting over into a community leadership or thought leadership or however you want to look at it. You mentioned PTSD, and I am a high performing combat vet, but there's real struggles. There's real struggles that this morning I got up at 6:30 and I went to yoga. All right, now as a 32-year-old, with my squadron mates that never would have admitted friggin' yoga, right? But it's really good for my head, and it's good for my flexibility because, and I keep reading all this stuff that talks about, getting into a centered place, focus, time blocking, do more, close the loop, stuff like meditate. And, and so that kind of fits into that, and sharing with people that, that going through, my own battles with the VA or whatever. And finally, finally kind of breaking through and figuring out kind of what's the secret, what's the gouge, what's the scuttlebutt, like how, what's the cheat sheet? I mean, how do you break the code, right, to get help, and it's and that it's okay. Right, but I mean that for me is like a new mission, right? I retired literally June 1st from scouting. My son eagled 5 years ago, and I was committee chair for Troop 35.
Right.
And my heart, honestly, my heart wasn't in it anymore, and so I was terrible for that. I did help navigate the troop through a painful transition with a schism in the church. It was the Methodist Church. They were United Methodists. They disaffiliated and. Anyway, but they stayed at Southside Methodist, which I'm super grateful for, and they're going on into a new chapter, and someone else is leading them because, it was time for me to sunset that. Yeah. But now I'm spending a lot more time with VFW and with PTSD issues.
Right.
And it's it's the same thing though. It's the same brand. My daughter talks about things being on brand. Right. I still care about people. I'm still pretty open and transparent about all sorts of things in my life, and I'm willing to share. And I'm willing to talk to people even about painful discussions they don't want to talk about. Christianity, talk about my testimony. Talk about spending a lot of time in the Muslim world and, speaking, Arabic and Farsi with, folks that have a totally different construct.
Right. So again, to relate it back to some of our listeners, or maybe in some of these new agents that are out there, would you suggest to them structure your day? But you've got to find some of these things you love to do. Whether it's if you like the drama and so forth and want to volunteer at Limelight Theater, go spend some time there. If it's you're a veteran and working with some veterans that are having issues and so forth, or going to the VFW, Elks Lodge, there's a tremendous amount of places that are that are doing great things that can be found out that want you right now. They need people to do this, and these are places where you're going to meet people. Now, some of these places you might walk in and it's not the person standing in front of you that's actually the person that needs you, but they know people.
Right.
And adding value, getting loyalty and trust by going in. They know people that are going to want to refer you. I think, like I said, too many agents are looking too short term. That go spend a couple hours. You think about all the different marketing things. Marketing is such a wide variety, broad word. You're marketing yourself all the time, 24/7 as a real estate agent. And everything you do, and it goes back again. I think I'm probably just going to name this loyalty and trust.
Right.
It goes back, where can you go and gain loyalty and trust and credibility, and where can I get started today? You got to start that journey.
But you've got to go gain loyalty, trust, credibility as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's got to be first, real estate agent second. People care that you're qualified and that you know what you're doing as far as real estate's involved. But going in and digging in, go in with a servant's heart. And go in because, I had no intention of, starting off as a den leader in Cub Scouts. I mean, I was there to be with my son, to be involved in the things he was doing, right? And and keep him alive, right? I mean, because let's be clear. I mean,
that whittling stick can be
there. He's now 23 and still keep And so I went on all the high adventure trips, and actually ended up going on one more than he did. So I got my Grand Slam. He only got his Triple Crown. Well, whatever, fine. But he was supposed to go on that last one, and then anyway, work called him away. But he, I was, there. Trying to explain to my wife that our 14-year-old is going to go on a canoe trip, do like 100 miles in the Canadian wilderness, where there's he's 50 miles away from the nearest road,
right.
And there is a float plane that can come in if there's an emergency. But by the way, we can't actually communicate with the people that would send the float plane, and they can't get in, and there's like a lake, like 8 lakes over maybe, that they can land on. That's Lake Agnes, by the way, but I don't know how we're going to get to and she's like, are you going to go with them? And I was like, oh yeah, no, I'll go with them. Yeah. So I got to go on Northern Tier with Brandon, and that was awesome. One of our first, amazing epic adventures. And then all these parents, number of whom have been lifelong customers of mine. Well, I kept their son alive, right? One of them, we had a medical emergency, literally, 50 miles away from the nearest road in the Canadian wilderness, and that was exciting. But he, of course, doing great. It's fine. But but trying to kind of work through all that. I mean, that's you've got to go in though. You've got to go in focused on whatever that is. The real estate's got to be second, because people see right through that. Well, you get commission breath. Yeah, Tracy, you know this. Mm-hmm. You get commission breath, and the two different key things. One is that you gotta work today on what's going to be 90-day money, right? Because there's very little that you can do today that's going to pay you in 10 or 15 days, right? It's all kind of at least out there a little bit. But Gary Keller, I was just reading a book, and Gary Keller had said that whoever develops a club around their database is going to win this game. And so look at your database.
Develops a club around their database.
Yes.
How does he describe this club? Make this simple. I get an idea. An idea is going through my head, but how do you?
Bass fishing, or playing Dungeons and Dragons, or Fortnite. I don't know. Pick a common interest. Who cares? People that have, cats that have 3 legs. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. If you can develop a club around some group of people that you connect with, It doesn't matter what that is. It has not, if you got a bunch of friends that really like going to, Judas Priest concerts or whoever's playing.
Right. Grateful Dead obviously had their club. Yeah.
No, I mean, go, drill down into something that's, a little, as niche as, well, so for me, a lot of it was historic area stuff. Now, one of the problems is that, so I have, San Marco has been great for me, and I think I've sold more houses in San Marco than anyone else has ever. Okay. Now there is one competitor that would probably like to challenge, and I'd like to compare.
Sure, yeah.
At some point, if she's interested, I'd like to compare house for house. And I don't know if we're counting units. Is that sides? Is that I don't know. I think I got it. But anyway,
you're see. There.
I think so. Who knows? Let's compare. But one of the problems is, so I've been a Nocte certified agent for a long time, because that, to a certain extent, is a little inoculation about, we sell new houses. I do a lot of San Marco, but you can get pigeonholed in a niche, but that niche has never actually hurt me though. And then I was the chair of the historic area council for NEFAR for years and years. I was either chair or co-chair for 13 years. Mm-hmm. All right, which I had to find someone to take that away, right? Please. Oh my God. Seriously. You do 13 years. Someone else could get that resume line, right?
Right.
Literally. Yeah. Don't need it anymore. It's fine. But that's where my heart was. And that did help with that, just kind of locking in that understanding that, he knows historic.
You put 20 years in the Navy. We're a Navy town.
Right.
Did you see a market there, or you also have a market there? You just keep it on. That's another. Because there's some agents obviously that have exploited that.
Right.
I don't want to say exploited in a bad word, but they market because they have family, their husband, wife, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so much easier for someone to tap into who's on base a bit. Who spends time on base, who has a direct connection. I've never been super successful with tapping into the Navy stuff. It's part of my, it's part of my makeup, part of who I am. It did, cause the genetic defect that maybe, adjusted my personality in whatever weird way that somehow works, well for what I did.
I hear in those aircraft carriers, the radars were causing it.
Yeah. But San Marco's not a destination that a lot of Navy folks go to. A lot of them go to Orange Park if they're at NAS.
Right.
A lot of them go to the beach if they're at, at Mayport. But that's definitely been kind of an undercurrent, but I've never really tapped in super well to that. I do think that VA and FHA buyers are at an advantage right now in this particular market. And the reason why I think that is I think VA and FHA buyers have been pretty much, they've been out, competed basically, that's really not. But for the last 3 years, they've had a really difficult time competing.
Yeah.
And cash buyers are totally wanting to make deals right now, but cash buyers want a discount.
Yeah.
And VA and FHA buyers are like, I'll pay your asking price, please. I really need a house. I've been trying for years. And so your VA or FHA buyer often is offering, $20,000, $30,000 more than that cash buyer is. And that's very attractive to a seller because at the end of the day, it's all cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it funds and there's cash in the bank. Would you wait for an extra, to make sure the inspection and the appraisal are okay? Wait an extra 20 days for an extra $25,000? Yeah, most sellers would say, I'll wait for that.
Well, that kind of leads us into, I want to finish up here. We're looking at our timer right now. What do agents need to be doing right now? If Mr. Watts say, I want you to speak to, these 100 agents, maybe, they're making a living, but they're not. What do they need to be doing right now in this current marketplace that we have right now?
Same thing we do in every marketplace. You have one job, prospect. There's one job, it's to prospect. And so that prospecting can take a lot of different, there's a lot of different avenues, a lot of different things you can do. And, part of that's social media, part of that's phone calls, part of that's going to networking events, part of that's doing all sorts of things.
Finding what you love to do, I would imagine.
We are only job is to prospect, and you prospect, and then with those prospects, then you connect with those people, and then you make an appointment. And so when you make an appointment, you work on what you're doing, buyer, seller, whatever it is, and you kind of lead them through the process. You've got your, we'll call it intake, we'll call it whatever, but the only thing that you need to do in any particular market is prospect, and just keep prospecting. And so people always ask me, they're like, "Are you busy?" I'm like, I don't understand the question. I mean, there were 2 months that I was not busy. There was this 1 month in 2008. It's like September, actually maybe early October, when the entire world melted down. Right, the whole financial structure melted down, and yeah, I was not that busy that month. That month, we were trying to figure out what the heck we were going to do, and if we needed to do a massive pivot, right, like career change, like this isn't going to work. And there was another month that, you remember March 2020?
Yes, I do.
You remember the 15 days to flatten
Everyone,
the curve? Yeah, I was at TPC March 13th, and they're like, "Hey, drink up because we're closed tomorrow." And it was Thursday, and we were talking to the bartenders. We're like, "All right, well, I'm going to do my part because I'm a team player. So give me a double, and then I'm going to be right back." But the Thursday we went home and we didn't go back to work. Maybe it went back to work on Friday, but I mean, then the whole world shut down, and so that that 2 weeks there, in the first 2 weeks of April, I didn't wear shoes. The weather was wonderful, right? But I mean, I was not super busy. That I've always been busy.
So when you go to these, you're at the chamber or whatever. Again, going back to the prospecting, and we're talking about, hey, we're suggesting to these agents, get out and get involved in the many different, whatever it is that floats your boat, get involved in it, start showing up consistently. Are you asking, these, hey, or just through naturally, hey, what do you do for a living? Because a lot of people obviously just in talking and whatever, you might be packing bags at the food bank, right? You just start chit-chatting about whatever.
That is
Are you adding these people to your database? Are you adding these people to, you're getting their, or obviously you can get a lot of them on social media, get a lot of their information, but getting their email addresses. And
of course you get the first loan from here, but that's okay. We'll get Alan and Tom on there. No, I mean, so part of it is, we got a 3-word elevator pitch, right? I mean, I sell houses, but it's,
I like that.
I have always hated that. What do you do? Right. Because I mean, I don't want to, you're not what you do, right? I mean, for a living.
You're afraid that person might return back, say, I'm a stripper at Wacko's or something? That might be their response?
Cash buyer. No, sorry. She lives somewhere. I'm just saying.
She does.
Or he. I don't know.
Yeah, we can't be.
Yeah, I don't know. No, but so the listening is always better than talking. Right, you need to be, you need to receive information. I saw another quote that you're most interesting when you are interested. Right, when you're interested in someone else, that makes you more interesting person. But so I do think that listening, I don't like that question, but there's like a bazillion other questions. The forward questions, talk about family, talk about occupation, talk about recreation, talk about dreams. There are, there's a bazillion different questions. What brings you here? I don't know. Hey, that's a cute shirt. Where do you get that? I mean, what do you, the 4th of July is coming up. Where's the best place? You said you're in St. Augustine. What's the best place to watch fireworks in St. Augustine, right? There's just start talking.
Right.
And then listen. But somewhere in there, if you're in a networking event,
Well, if you go to BNI, it's natural. I'm just like the church and so forth.
Is it natural at BNI? I'm just asking. I'm not a BNI guy, but
But these agents are thinking prospecting, so they're thinking about how do I adding these people to my database, right? But it's not necessarily that direct. Obviously, you're seeing this person every week. You're showing up, at the church for whatever volunteer night it is. I don't know, Fish Fry Friday or whatever it is. Right. You're showing up every week. That's part of your prospecting. So, eventually, you get to the adding them to your database or whatever it might be.
That's not maybe that's prospecting, but for me, that's not prospecting. But then you talk to people, and then they give you your business card, and then you call them the next day. That's prospecting. Okay, and so that's where that moment in time is a time for connection. All right. So when you're connecting with people, that's not exactly the same as prospecting, but you do need to be out there and connecting with people. And then when you figure out those people that you're connecting with, then call them and say, hey, listen, I really enjoyed talking last Tuesday, and I just wanted to ask you. We just just finished our latest guide for the summer. Do you mind if I send you a copy? You mentioned you were in this neighborhood, and I don't know if you knew that they're doing a big food truck thing on Friday, and I just thought you should know about that. And I'm actually going to help sponsor one of the folks there, and I'm doing a raffle for I don't know.
Right.
I mean, just something to connect, right? And then add them to your database. I do think I really hate it when it's comes.
So
to
is it really
calls.
connecting or prospecting that they need to do first?
Don't worry about it. Don't overthink that.
Well, that's what you just described.
Yeah.
Because they need to get out.
Yeah.
They need to get out and, like you said, get involved in these things and start making connections, letting everyone know, even if they wear a Watson Real Estate T-shirt.
Right.
That's a subtle way of letting everyone know, I'm a real estate agent.
Right. What are they doing if they're not? I mean, people are literally just at home.
Well, I mean, some of the top agents I have on are some of these moms that go to their son's ball games, sitting there sweating and getting eat up by bugs, but they're wearing something that says "I do real estate."
Sponsor the team.
Yes.
Sponsor the team, and then your logo's on the back of everybody's shirts, and everybody sees it when they when they're running around or when they take it out of the wash. I mean, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, sponsor stuff. I mean, but I've got very specific time each week that I'm prospecting, and go to these, sure, take classes, but then put it in practice, and take more classes and put it in practice. But so the one that I think of them as 5-90-10s, where I block off 2 hours basically, and I spend 5 minutes kind of developing what I'm going to do, and I spend 90 minutes calling people, and then 10 minutes, technically it's a little bit less than 2 hours, but 10 minutes kind of recapping what I do. And one of the problems that I have that's really made me plateau for like the last 10 years, which is kind of an issue. You can't really complain about it a whole lot, but I've been kind of plateaued for the last 10 years. And I think it's because I was a helicopter pilot. I mean, I'm kind of seated the pants. I mean, I kind of, just make it up as I go along. I've really realized, particularly in the last couple of years, I've got to add structure. And so I've been adding in structure. I've been adding in time blocking. I've been adding in, this is what I'm going to accomplish today. This is what I'm going to accomplish this week. This is my goal for this month, for this quarter. And that is helping immensely. And I finally partnered a year ago with Susan Hopkins, who I'd been working with for 12 years. We actually went 50-50. People were, why do you go 50-50? Well, because that changed the dynamic so much. Was I bringing in? I mean, I'm kind of the rainmaker. I've got all these, connections and things I've been working on for 20-something years. But to have her totally bought in, and we're in this together, and we're figuring out what to do together, has been a game changer. And I think that really this next year, that's gonna break us out.
So the question that comes up on almost every show, some of these agents reaching lid. We were at the mastermind a couple weeks ago at Landmark, and we were talking about teams and those. What is teams is such a, again, like marketing. It's how do you want a team of real estate agents, or really you need a team of some support staff? When you got this, what does your support staff look like? Do you have a full-time transaction coordinator, you and Susan, right now? What does your structure look like?
So we have a full-time assistant that does, she's transaction coordinator, she's marketing, she's admin, and so those are her core functions. So we don't really worry about a lot of the nuts and bolts. Now, one of the problems, I'd love to talk to like some of these teams about like how they deal with repair issues. And I think that to a certain extent, I mean, my average house is 75 years old. I mean, there's some stuff that comes up, and sometimes that's pretty tedious and kind of like really absorbs a lot of time, and that's hard to outsource. Just because I've read through thousands of inspection reports, and I have the contact database, but I would love to kind of streamline some of the repair stuff a little bit better. And that Susan's been great about taking a bunch of that, just kind of heavy lifting off of my plate. But yeah, so we have one admin support.
How important has that been, though, to give you the time to go to be the Boy Scouts and stuff? I mean, is that that people reach that like it is a lid, and you can't grow anymore if you're trying to do everything yourself. You've got to spin some of this stuff off on somebody.
Right. Well, and you've got to spin some of that stuff off. And the other thing is getting overcommitted. And when I got called up and went to Afghanistan, aside from all the other stuff that was going on with leaving my 2 and 4-year-old, sitting in this, cold, dark place in Afghanistan, and my stress level was lower. And I thought, what the hell? And I realized that I was on 5 different boards and I was chairing 2 of them, and I was just running myself ragged, as a realtor and doing all this stuff. And I got back into that situation again a couple of years ago where I was on like 5 different boards. I was looking at all my obligations, and I realized that I had 11 nights a month that were dedicated to something other than my business or my family.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, there's not that. I mean, there's only like 30, right? And that's including the weekends. And so what am I doing, right? And it's actually taken a long time to kind of shift out of that. And I finally, as of June 1st, literally, there was a meeting last night that I didn't have to go to, which thank God. But I finally have kind of cleared my plate of that stuff, and I'm trying not to add in new stuff with that. But anyway, I forgot what the question was.
Well, the importance of you want to get involved in these things and your time and putting some of these tasks over on someone, relying on somebody who can, whether it's a transaction coordinator, an assistant, or one of the terms I have on here, I put mentor. Have you ever had a mentor in your?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meet with her every other week.
Oh, these guys, or as a coach or a mentor?
Well, so I've got a coach mentor. Okay. And there are a lot of other people that I have surrounded myself with. And, part of this is, and this is just the way I grew up. My parents got divorced when I was early, and I had a stepdad that was, I think he was crazy for a bit. We're cool now. But and I've tried to be a good husband, and I've tried to be a good dad. And both of my dads my dad and stepdad had great qualities, but they also had some that were not ones I wanted to replicate. And so I have always surrounded myself. I've found people that I'm like, okay, I really respect that in this person. Let me go talk to him about why. And, and so I've done the same thing in business. And, and that's, I love going to, Mike Rolowitz's events. And I love talking with Mike. And so his team's different than mine. David Butler, another, hero of mine who's been Watson forever. He and Claire are the only people on the planet that I know that have a team that's very similar to the model that Susan and I have. And we're kind of modeling after David and Claire, where they just went 50-50 early on when David was producing like 90% of the business, and now it's balanced and it's been really good. And I've asked him and her, like, how did that happen? And they're like, well, man, that just transformed the whole relationship. There's no other way to really, clarify, like, how important you are to me that, listen, I'm just going to share half everything I make with you.
Yeah.
Right. And
how do you tell your wife that, hey, I'm going to take half my normal commissions because I'm going to share it over here with
Well, how are you going to work with a young lady who, 12 years ago, who, and have your wife and have my wife and her husband be cool with it? There's a lot of different kind of moving
dynamics
with that, and just trying to make sure, and a lot of that is real intentionality and trying to make sure that everybody understands, listen, this is what my intention is, this is what we're trying to do, right? And how do you see that? And actually, and I hadn't talked to Susan about this much, but like, I see her kind of as a sister, which has really helped. She's like a sister in business, and that has been really helpful. Just trying to, how do you get your mind around what you're doing? And
are you guys dividing, like one's doing listings, one's buyer side, or you just help each other and tag team on prospects just to help each other cover each other's business?
We're helping each other with everything.
Yeah.
It's just 50-50.
Interesting.
So
another entire subject. We've been going about 90 minutes now. Yeah, it's gone by fast. Is there anything you like to add?
So, I think there's a bunch of different points, that we covered. I think the main thing is, don't give up. Just keep working, keep growing, keep learning. At some of the masterminds I've talked about, this is my 22nd first year in real estate. I talked to a lot of first year folks, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm new," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, you know what? All the contracts just changed. Everything just changed. I'm new too, right?
Yeah.
And and what worked." What worked yesterday isn't necessarily what works today, but that's with like the silver bullet things, the core stuff, which is understand your branding, connect with people, find people that you resonate with, work with those people, add people to your prospect base. Don't focus on just commission. You don't want to have commission breath. Focus on people. You focus on people, that pays off fantastically in the long run.
Just key points here. I think we've got resonate with your avatar, right? Who you're focused on. Focus on people, loyalty, and trust. Right. Those I think are some key points. There might have been some others, but there are 4 right there.
Well, and you need to work with customers you trust. Okay, now this whole buyer agreement, I think is fantastic, right? Because buyers. Buyers have always been kind of a challenge because, you commit, you pour, you spend all this time, and then they're actually working with 5 different agents and then end up buying a FSBO. They're going to have something, you're going to have a contractual agreement. That's awesome, right? Now, what it means is that we need to do the same care and diligence that we do when we're on a listing interview. Right, and and you can't forget.
Just keep going.
You can't forget that you're always interviewing. You go and talk to some folks about a listing, and sometimes you think, am I interviewing? Always assume that you're interviewing.
Would you suggest with a new agent, and especially at Watson, where you guys have a lot of locations around town, to really try to do those buyers consultations face to face.
In office.
Worst case is Zoom, but try to get them in. Try to get them into your your home court.
Right. Will they do it? I don't know. Will the buyers? So we have no idea how the buyers are going to behave with this, right?
Right.
Someone contacted me through homes.com yesterday, right? And so we text him, and because it's late, I don't really feel like getting into the phone call, So we text him, and we're going to call tomorrow, and he just wants to see this house, right? Is that guy? Will he put up with coming into the office, or if we put that in as a constraint, hey, listen, this is what we want to do. We want to bring you into the office first because we need to go through, the process. Okay, so if that prevents us from connecting with that buyer, were we ever going to convert them anyway?
Yeah.
Do we care?
Yeah. Well, in putting it out there, obviously, blame it on. Well, I think the whole thing's obviously a farce because here people use the word law and stuff like this. There's no legislation that was ever put forth and voted on to make something some sort of law.
The agreement's not accepted yet.
Yeah, agreement's not accepted yet. And I think the funniest thing is when they were talking about everyone, we're up in Washington D.C. a month or so ago, and they said, well, who's going to police this? And they were like, oh, you got to police yourselves, and everyone basically laughed. So it is going to be interesting.
That's the whole problem. NAR's being punished because they're anyway.
Yeah. John, I appreciate you coming on. We could talk for hours and hours and hours, but I appreciate, and I want to in the future kind of do some sort of, what's the word, where they, have a couple different subjects and get another agent on, or maybe your partner come on, and then you guys actually talk about how you guys actually work together. Because I think, everyone's out there searching for some knowledge, and they have you guys come on, maybe talking about how you guys are working together, what your strengths are, what her strengths are, weaknesses, and back and forth, and how you make that work.
Right.
So it'd be interesting how this goes on for you.
Talk about the pinky promise.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
People may not want to replicate it. But you get to trust, right?
Right.
Well, trust in law, right? We actually don't have a written agreement. And I was talking to Claire, David and Claire, and she said, yeah, we actually don't have a written agreement either. And because,
It's a rolling 30-day note.
Well, no, I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
it's a 90-day trial period.
Yeah.
We're on our 51st 90-day trial. No, but so the, part of law, there's loopholes, right? I mean, if someone's going to screw you, they're going to screw you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you work with people you trust, and if at some point you don't have that trust, then you stop,
Yeah.
right? If you still trust them, it's all good.
Appreciate you.